All right, so I'm recording today, okay? Here. I just keep letting people in as they appear. So all right, so I'm in. For those of you just joining as well, I say keep letting folks in. Let me just let them get a moment to connect. So for those just joining, we are in Blackboard. So welcome to class. We're in Blackboard, just showing in the course content section. That's this section here. This is the stuff from the final exam. I'm going to go over that. And here's the annotated bibliography. Here's the first place where you were putting your annotated bibliographies. And then there's a new tab here for if anybody's doing a revision. This is where you would put the revision. Okay. So that's that. But what I put in here last week was this section here called final exam reading. And so in it is the essay that we're going to be reading for the final exam, right? And it's here as a PDF and it's a doc. I'll make it bigger so you can see what I'm talking about. And then there's the video of the first class we did on Monday when we read it together. We began talking about it, right? So if you were here, this is an opportunity for you to refresh your memory. You could see the class again. If you missed class, you can see what we did together and hear the reading of the story. And then this is the last class we did last week on Wednesday, where we began working on the looking at a prompt, like a fake prompt. So it was the real essay, but not the real prompt, right? It was a prompt I just created for us to work on. And that's here. And then what is here as well. So we did that kind of work together. And 1 second, let me turn my phone off. That was that sound. If you heard anything, that was the sound of a call coming through. So so the video's there. It has the second class, but here in this little section here, this is the class work on the mock fake practice prompt. This is the work. I did a document. I'm going to open it up because we'll work on that again. Right. This is the mock document that we worked on. And this here, let me open it so we can see the PDF version of it. Right. It's the mock one. It's like the writing directions are similar to what we will do, but then the writing prompt, you know, this is the question. And here, it's the same thing. It shows us the question. And on your final exam, you will get a writing prompt. Not this one, right? Just to be clear, it's not this prompt, but you will get a writing prompt. And then the writing prompt will be, you know, phrased similarly. And then we'll have similar phrasing. It's going to ask you to examine something about the essay. And then you will respond by writing an essay on it, right? Responding to it. So what we did was we looked in, so I'm going to go into that in a minute. So first I'm just here, right? So I'm just making sure that you all are aware of the tools you need to be ready for the final exam. We covered basically the main thing is studying the document, which we did last week. And we're going to look at it this week again. And then we're going to do a little more work on this, right? So two things for folks who are just joining us, as that we were just reviewing the annotated bibliography. If somebody was missing an annotated bibliography, you got an email from me last week telling you that I did not have it. Some of you responded by just loading it, which is great. And others, it's still outstanding. So you have until today to get that annotated bibliography in. And if any of you got your response and want to do a revision to it, the revised place to upload it is here, right? So the original one is there, annotated bibliography for English, and then the one that says revision clearly is for the revision of the annotated bibliography. All of that is in the course content section of Blackboard, right? So I'm going to pause, and if anybody has a question, just unmute and you can ask the question. And I'm going to come back into the class, make sure that it's in speaker. Okay. So if anybody have a question about, yeah.
Professor, Sir, I don't know if you mentioned it before, but I wanted to know where I could check for the grade on the annotated bibliography.
Very good. Okay, I'll go back to that now. So yes, so the way you can check for the grade for the annotated bibliography, you go back to your paper and it's going to be a number, right? Like a number grade. We haven't used number grades, but that doesn't let me put a letter in it, turn it in. So it's a number. So you'll get like a, if you'll see 85 or 92 or 100, clearly 100 is the equivalent of an A, right, that you did. But all the other numbers are on a chart in the syllabus. So I'm going to open up the syllabus. One
Yeah, on
moment.
every syllabus. Hey guys,
Okay.
I know every syllabus, so this is not just his class, but most syllabuses, they have the grading scale. It has all of your assignments, what they're each worth. So yeah, you're about to see. There's a little chart on yours that lets you know what an A is equivalent to, what your points are, and if I'm not mistaken, yeah, then you would have your grade point average as well. So this also will help when you guys get all your grades back to know what your GPA is. So you see you have A plus. Well, just know A plus will not go on your transcript. I'm sorry guys, I'm an overachiever as well. But it just doesn't happen. But you see why it changes that perfect 4.0 to 4.25. So let's say if you got a 85, 86, you would have got a B. That would give you whatever your grade is for this class. So it'll be there. That is nice that you guys get these numbers too for that assignment. Because I know for me, some professors make it like worth 5 points. And it's like, what does that mean? But this is right here, what you would see your grade as. You would see the middle section for your grades on Blackboard.
Right. Thanks, Julia. Yeah, so this middle section is what Julia is referring to here, where you see the 100 plus 97, et cetera. Those are the numbers. So you'll probably see grades that are like 88 or 85 or 92 or 100, on your thing, and you could see what the letter grade equivalent. I think the other thing that Julia reminded me when she was speaking is that this is how sometimes, like some of you have gotten like an A plus on a paper in your class, right? And in this little box in the corner, it says, although some of the grades on this sheet are here, they're not part of CUNY's grading policy, right? So you, like for instance, you can also get like a C minus, or D pluses. Those are not grades that are in the system. In the system, you go from a C to a D, right? You don't have a D minus in the system. But this is the way this works also is if you've gotten an A plus in the class, when it's figuring it in, you see it's worth 4.25. So it kind of helps your overall grade. So it does help your overall grade. Just repeating what Julia is saying, it can't get an A plus in the transcript.
You do get the other pluses though. I have 2 B pluses on my transcript. So you do get the plus and every other plus but the A plus and no minus.
Mm-hmm. And if you see in this chart, the things that are bold are the ones that are not on the and it kind of explains it in the box, but it's not the ones you can't be there that are not there. But for the sake of this right now, for those of you, to Melissa's question, is you go here to see what the number is. But you should go back to Blackboard, and I believe even the ones that were just uploaded over the weekend, I graded everything that's in there. So everybody should have their grade. So that's the second thing I want to do today, that we will take time if anybody got their annotated bibliography and have questions and want some support. Julia, I'm going to ask that I could put them in a breakout room with you, and I'll give you access to the I'll send you both a PDF of the annotated bibliography, and then Julia can work with some folks if folks need that, to have any questions with the annotated bibliography. We could spend the last part of class doing that. So again, any other questions? Thanks for that question, Melissa. Any other questions folks have? Okay, so then it's been a week, or not a week, maybe 5 days, since we've seen each other. And so first I want to open up the essay so we could be clear, right? Everybody knows that our essay, this is the essay. I'm going to repeat this only because last class there was someone was not clear that it was this actual essay that we're reading was going to be the essay for the final paper. So I'm going to share my screen so we can all take a look at it. You know, it exists in course content, so you'll have it. And so this is the article we're reading. It's called Why People Are Acting So Weird. And here it says crime, unruly passengers, incidents, and other types of strange behavior have all soared recently. Why? Right? So it's why people are acting so weird, right? So it's not saying why are people acting so weird. It's like it's a statement why people are acting so weird. So the title is a statement, right? And then I'm just going to read a little bit of the beginning of it for you all. I mean, your classmates did a wonderful job last week reading it. And we have that on video, so if you want to hear your classmates reading it. But what's most important is that you read it. And I'm saying that it's important that you read it, even if I'm going to read some of it now and look at the different sections. That it's important you read it because that's one of the ways in which you learn, right? By you can even read it out loud to yourself. But and so what we did is we slowed down and we broke it down. So I'm going to do the review. So it begins. Everyone is acting so weird. The most obvious recent weirdness was when Will Smith smacked Chris Rock at the Oscars. But if you look closely, people have been behaving badly on smaller stages for months now. Last week, a man was arrested after he punched a gate agent at the Atlanta airport. The gate agent looked like he was about to punch back until his female colleague, bless her soul, stood on some chairs and said no to the entire situation. That wasn't even the only viral asshole on a plane video that week, right? So we look at this here. The date is March 30th, right? So it's pretty recent. It was just this past March, at the end of March, she wrote that. So we're in the middle of May. So it's like a month and a half ago. She wrote this, so this was published. And she's speaking about very recent events, right? And she's speaking in a way that's almost conversational, almost like, you know, like somebody, not necessarily like an academic. She goes in and out of that language, but it's written in that way. But the important thing is she's giving us real examples of people behaving, and she's using the word weirdly, right? And then she goes and she gives us a couple more examples, right? And she goes into some statistics, and it's all supporting the idea that people are behaving weirdly or behaving badly, right? And the last paragraph in that section, the last two paragraphs is she says, you know, healthcare workers. She's giving us more examples, right? Talking about how the murder increased, how car thefts. There's an increase in crime, increase in people behaving badly, and there's all of this. And the reason why she's saying is that she gives it because the pandemic. So she goes, what on earth is happening? How did Americans go from clapping for healthcare workers to threatening to kill them? More than a dozen experts in crime psychology and social norms recently walked me through a few possible explanations. So the first part of the section of the essay, she lays out her rationale. She lays out what she's expecting, right? She's introducing us to the issue. And the issue is that people are acting weird. And there's all this support to show what she means by weird, right? By people misbehaving, by people being violent, by crime rising. And then she says she's going through the why, like how come, right? And so she titles each section, right? This one says we're all stressed out, right? I'm going to just scroll to the next one. The next one says people are drinking more, right? She goes to the next one. We're social beings and isolation is changing us, right? And I think, and then mental illness, right? She says how the mental illness, it says can't explain this, right? So it's there, it's contributing it, but it's not the sole reason to explain it. And that's the end, right? And then she does a conclusion, right? And we said the last two paragraphs with the conclusion. So just looking at it without even reading the content, and if you're with us for the first time, you might be saying, okay, what is this article about? It's why people are acting so weird. And the important thing to understand, at least in terms of structure, is that the beginning, she introduces it. She literally titles the sections saying why, you know, stress, isolation, alcohol and drug abuse. She kind of lists all the reasons why inside of it, right? And I'm going to go to the first reason, right, when she says stress. and read a little bit of the stressed one, right? So she says, we're all stressed out. One likely explanation for the spike in bad behavior is the rage, frustration, and stress coursing through society right now. When Christine Porath, right, she goes to a professional, a business professor at Georgetown University, collected data on why people behave in rude or uncivil ways, the number one reason by far was feeling stressed or overwhelmed, she told me. The pandemic has created a lot of high stress, low reward situations, said Keith Humphreys, a psychiatry professor at Stanford. And now everyone is teetering slightly closer to their breaking point. Someone who may have lost a job, a loved one, or a friend to the pandemic might be pushed over the edge by an innocuous request. And then innocuous, we said, was something that wasn't really a big consequence, something that was possibly even simple, a simple request. And then it pushes people over the edge, right? And she goes on to continue writing. When someone has that angry feeling, it's because of a combination of some sort of provocation, their mood at the time of that provocation, and how they interpret that in provocation, said Ryan Martin, a psychology professor at University of Wisconsin at Green Bay who studies anger. Not only are people encountering more provocations, staffing shortages, mask mandates, but also their mood is worse when provoked. Americans don't really like each other very much right now, he added. Rudeness can be contagious. Forrest has found that at work, people spread their negative emotions to their colleagues, bosses, and clients, even if those individuals weren't the source of the negativity, right? So she is talking about the impact of stress here and how it's affecting people. So it's important that you read the article, right? So that you see all the different reasons. Again, when you're doing your final exam, you have the article with you. It's not like it's hidden. You could read it, you could refer to it. My recommendation, I believe, it will automatically go live in course content in the same area where we saw I put the annotated bibliography and that folder with all of the things for the final exam. That's in it will appear there. I'm going to check it to make sure because it's something that's pre-programmed, and I can see it on my Blackboard, but it won't go live until 12:30 a.m. tomorrow on the 18th, Wednesday 18th. That's Wednesday. So what? So Tuesday, I'm saying tomorrow because tomorrow night, you're up all night at 12:30 a.m., which is the next day, the prompt will go live and you'll be able to read the prompt. So again, I don't recommend staying up, to wait for it unless you're that kind of person, but I'm going to come back into the class for a minute. So just be ready. Just know that when you wake up Wednesday morning, the prompt will be live. If you have time on Wednesday, I recommend you taking a look at it and you will, and then you can begin. I suggest that if you have any time this week, that you make time like on Wednesday and Thursday to try to work on it, at least start it and work on it. That's my recommendation. I think the further it won't be due until next week, Tuesday by 11:59. That's the deadline. It's not that it's due then. It's due immediately, but the last time you have to submit it will be on Tuesday, May 24th at 11:59 p.m. After that, that portal that opened will close. Okay. And Julia is putting stuff in the chat, right? And so so everybody, so please check the chat. But and Stephanie's asking for some help. And at some point, Stephanie and Julia, if you want to go into I know Stephanie's on the train, so I don't know if Stephanie's in have the conditions to do it, but that's something we could do. I could put you in a breakout room, and then both of you could talk.
I'm still walking, but I can talk. I have like the topics and everything saved up on my Google Drive, so I can like send her a screenshot or share my screen.
Okay, so I don't know if you can share your screen in
the breakout. Yes, you can.
She can. Okay, I just want to make sure. All right, cool. So so let me know. So I'm just gonna do a few more things, and then I'm gonna do a few more things. I'm gonna go back to the prompt, and then what time is it? It's 1:12. So I would say like in about 20-25 minutes, I will pause, and then so if folks, like as Stephanie, if you want to go into the breakout room with Julia, you could do that. And I think you will have the opportunity to just leave the breakout room whenever you're done and come back here, Julia. And if someone else wants to work with Julia, we could do that. I will stay with the rest of the class and continue reviewing the final exam, and or we could also review other things as, and answer questions. Okay.
Please.
Okay. All right. So I want to go back to the first thing that's important is to read the article, right? Definitely read the article. Then now I'm going to go back to the mock of what we were working on last time together. And I encouraged you all, and I made it extra credit to do a summary of the article. So if you did it, great. You also have a head start on it. So let's see if I can here. So what we did was last class in preparation was to say, I made up a prompt, right? And here's this, I'm going to highlight it so we can see what the prompt is here. And the prompt reads, in the Atlantic article, Why People Are Acting So Weird, Olga Kazan outlines how some people have been behaving during the pandemic, right? That's just the statement. The next thing is a question. In what ways has the pandemic affected people, right? And then it says, use evidence from the article to support your observation. So last class, we said, oh, how interesting. This is just a simple question, right? It wasn't saying, name 5 ways that it wasn't giving you that much direction. It was just asking a question. In what ways has the pandemic affected people? So what we did was we took that sentence, we singled it out, right? We could have also just as easily highlighted it or underlined it, but we brought it out here. Excuse me. And then we did some brainstorming, right? We started saying we started answering the question, like, in what ways has the pandemic affected people? And these responses I got from all of you, right? You all said it has a mental impact on people, anxiety, it has affected people by being more violent. People are becoming lonely and angry. So all of these responses, people are drinking more, drug abuse, these were the brainstorming that we did together as a class. But you would be doing some kind of brainstorming on your own, right? And then you would come up with your reasons, right? And we came up with like 6 of them because we said we always want to come up with more than 3 or 4. We want to be able to come up with as many as we can think of, and then make a decision of which ones we feel we could write the most about, or which ones we understand the most, so that we could respond to the prompt. And then after we did the brainstorming, we began crafting a thesis statement, right? And we came up with 2 possibilities, right? The pandemic has been affecting people by creating isolation that has led to how people think more of themselves. So let me slow down a minute, I'll rewind. So then we took these elements, right, that we came up with, the reasons why, the brainstorming as we were answering the question, because it's asking us, in what ways has the pandemic affected people? And a way to craft the prompt is to say, the pandemic has affected people in this way, or in these ways, or by this. So these were the reasons we came up with, right? The pandemic has affected people by have a mental impact on some. Anxiety is an example. It affected people by people being more violent, more violent behavior, by people becoming more lonely and angry, right? And emotional, by people drinking more, by people abusing drugs more, and also the socially impacting the way people interact with others, so that rude behavior, right? So it's talking about these ways that the article is talking about these ways in which the pandemic these are the ways it has affected people, right? And so then we started doing the thesis statement. We did one that was so the pandemic, literally using that language. The pandemic has been affecting people by creating isolation that has led to how people think of more of themselves rather than considering other people, by changing their behaviors like more violence, drinking more, and abusing drugs, and socially impacting, we should change that, the way they interact with others, for example, rude behavior, right? So it's giving us the categories in which we're going to talk about in the body paragraph. Then we did one that was a lot more, that was more distilled, right? The pandemic has been affecting people emotionally, mentally, and their physical behavior, right? And that's another way in which to do it. So once we have our thesis statement, right, we start crafting our introduction, right? And we did 2 possible introductions, right? So we did one, right, with course with the introduction. Let me go back here. Every intro paragraph must have a synopsis, right? You all told me this is the order you gave it to me. A synopsis, summary, right? A thesis statement, right? The title of the article and the author of the article. So the body paragraph for an essay, particularly one just dealing with one article, should have all of these 4 pieces. If there were 2 articles, you'd have 2 articles, right? And 2 authors. If there were 3 articles, et cetera, right? If there were 10, you may not be naming all 10 articles. You might summarize that, saying several articles, and such as, you know. But right now, let's focus on this essay because we're only doing one essay for your. We're only focusing on one article for your essay. So your intro, synopsis, thesis, title of the article, author of the article. Should have those minimum, right? These 4 minimum things, right? And then we came up with it, right? And so here, the yellow's the title, the blue's the author's name, the synopsis is the like a pinkish purple, and then the thesis statement is green, right? So the thesis statement was brought from one of these, right? This first one. So I'm just going to read the introduction, right? Why people, for our essay, if we were writing an essay on this, Why People Are Acting So Weird is written by Olga Kazan and appears in the Atlantic magazine. This article talks about the people's bad behavior, right? About people's bad behavior. Everyone is acting weird these days, and the impact of the pandemic has a lot to do with it. Anxiety and depression are rising, and it is beginning to cause stress on healthcare workers, healthcare centers. Violence is also starting to emerge, causing crime rates to increase, family bonds to weaken, and threats to healthcare workers. The answer to all of this is that Americans are stressed. So it has been affecting people by creating isolation that has led to, and then you could see the thesis statement is there. To remind class that part in purple, I didn't, we crafted it a little bit, maybe edited a little bit to fit inside of it, but it was actually one of your classmates did the summary, and that was the one and that's what that we used that text, that language, and that's to show that it's important to draft a summary so that way you also, another way to help you understand, to make sure you understand it, but it also creates the material that you will use to build your synopsis, right? So maybe your summary might be 7 sentences, 8 sentences, 12 sentences. You may not be using all those 12 sentences for it, but you will probably use most of it or some of it to help craft your synopsis, okay? Then we did, just so that we could see one way of doing it, right? We did a second one, and I think they use a second one, yes, and we use a second one, right? So here's the other idea. So the world has been feeling the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, right? It starts with a big, like, open statement, right? The author, Olga Kazan's article, Why People Are Acting So Weird, highlights both, and we just did it again, the behaviors and the reasons why, and anxiety and depression are rising, and it is beginning to cause stress on healthcare centers. And then the language there, and then we use the other for the synopsis that your student classmate wrote, and I believe it was Teresa, and then the pandemic has been affecting people emotionally, physically, and their physical behavior. So we just did a second one just so we could see that it's not like, it doesn't have to be a formula, right? The important thing that, and this one seems a little bigger, this one has a little more, this thesis statement has more information inside of it, but, and this one is less, but just because this one is less, it still provides the space for structure. Go ahead, Julia.
The only formula that you guys see here is the placement of where the topic sentence is, where that supporting info is, and where that thesis is. So it's the only thing that you would say, okay, that's where it needs to be. That's it. But just like the professor said, if you did do the draft, we all know that the final is going to be on this paper. which
Mhm.
means that your thesis is going to be moldable from your draft to whatever the actual question is for the prompt. So he's suggesting it. I, who hate homework as a student, I'm suggesting it. So at least if you're not halfway done, a quarter is better than nothing. A quarter is better than a penny, because the penny is just the story. At least if you had a quarter to get some candy or a bag of chips, you could do something. But if you don't have nothing, I don't want you to feel like tight losses. You have a lot of time to work on it.
Yeah. So so now the next part was I had asked if folks could select one of the intros and make an attempt at writing a body paragraph that would go with this essay. So I'm going to stop sharing screen for a moment and hold on 1 second with me. And I'm just going to say, if you could raise your hand. How's that? Hold on 1 second. You know how to use the raise your hand feature? I'll show you all just in case. So if you could see my screen, I don't know if you could see, hopefully you can see the bottom of it. If you can see the bottom, there's a little section that has reactions. Oh, 1 second, it disappeared. Let me stop sharing 1 second. Okay. Yes, it says reactions. Let me just. Yeah, I hope you can see my screen when I do it. Yeah, I think. Oh, I see what the problem is. When I go into share screen, it's hard to see that you can't see the reaction. That's what's happening on my end here. But if you go to the bottom of your screen, one of the things is reaction. So you could raise your hand, do a thumbs
Yeah,
up.
I think you either have to press more, like if you're using your phone, press more, or if I know participants, like anything with participating stuff will include that as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But anyway, you could also just unmute it. So did anyone make an attempt at a body paragraph?
So no one tried a body paragraph?
No, all I got was topics. My bad for the background noise. I'm still walking. But all I got is no, thank you. All I got was the topics for each paragraph, and then I got what I'm gonna use as my quotes.
So
And we're gonna do citation, right?
So if you have that, I would say you can. Does everybody have at least something? Maybe you guys can put the sentences in the chat and we can construct the essay over it. I'm just very happy this class was in person because things are very different online.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah, certainly use the chat. Yeah, I know. I believe it or not, last semester, I think it was, this class was I did this class online and I said never again.
Yeah,
for that reason.
It's hard. It's harder to participate in everything.
Yeah. But let's keep going, right? For now. But, I think what I do want to say is that in terms of particularly also the last couple of assignments that you've all done, that you've done, a fairly good job. That's important for the folks who hand in their work. we've had a chance to talk about it. We've had a chance to look at it. We've had a chance to work with Julia and benefit from Julia being in the classroom with us. So, I think you have the experience, you have the knowledge, right, to be able to craft this final exam. The important thing, so we're going through the mechanics of it, and I was doing it again, just as a review, but I feel like that part is the part that you understand. The important part and the part that's new is the article, right? So that, so it's important that you understand the article, that we read it, that you read it, and that will be an important part of constructing it, right? And so what I may do just for the next thing, just to go back to that mock and look at it. We can do a body paragraph together, but really that activity, that mechanics, is stuff that you can do, and I know that you can do, and you have done it, and so feel assured with that. And also the prompt is not. I can tell you, is not like a prompt from left field. It really does stick and adhere to the article, right? So, so that's a good part. So I'm going to say that, and I want to say one more thing related to that. So Q, you weren't in class last week, but I kept referring to you in class last week, and on Wednesday you weren't in class, but you were in class on Monday. And I remember on Monday when we began talking about the article, that you were talking about things that were happening in your life, right? That you saw something in Dunkin' Donuts, that you, some of you were talking about different experiences you've had on the subway, things that you saw around the school. So, and I was saying that all those things were important, right? But what's important, right, always, and I've said this all semester, is that you understand like what the writer is saying, right? That they are saying what the rationale they're giving, and that even though your information is important, that you don't, that's not, you're able to tell the difference, right? And when you read prompts, and be clear with what the prompt is asking you, right? And so we did do one of your assignments, right, that we did in class. The semester did ask you to talk about your own experience with something, right? To say, how do you do this and how do you deal with this part, right? So it did ask for you to do that, so that you're clear that if a prompt is just asking you about something with the article, which this prompt for the practice is saying, that it's like, why are people, you're saying the article, why are people acting weird, right? What are the reasons why that this is coming in the article, so that you understand that distinction. So prompts may ask you, to say, it may say, what is your opinion of something? And so you understand that the prompt is asking you for your opinion, right? And your opinion is coming from you. You're reading material, and from whatever that material is, you have your opinion. So that's the only other thing I want to say in terms of just in, prompt responding. You're going to be looking at prompts next semester in English 111 with whoever you work with, and that you will get prompts for your essay. And so the technique or the skill of reading a prompt is really just understanding the vocabulary, that what the words mean, that what they're asking you to do, and that understand a prompt is asking you for a response. So it could be a response up to the direct material, it could be a personal response, it could be different things, but the prompt is the one that's going to direct you on how to respond to it. Okay. Is that clear with the idea of the listening to what the prompt, or reading and saying, this is what the prompt is asking me?
Basically what we've been doing all semester, no?
Yes, Stephanie. Yes. Okay. Just understanding, but understanding what we've been doing is being able to say, this is what the prompt is asking me to do, and being able to respond to the prompt, right? So, so yes, so that's what you need to be ready for the final exam. You guys know how to craft an essay. We've gone over the intro, the body, and the conclusion. We've just, again, very slowly with this particular essay and with a mock prompt, not the actual prompt, we crafted an introduction. We crafted the thesis statement, brainstorming, introduction, and then the next steps would be to do the body paragraphs in response, okay? So I'm gonna go to the document again, and I'm gonna go just pick one. So let me share my screen and okay, I'm just keeping track of time so that, all right. So we have two here, right? So if we look at the green, right, both of them, the greens here are the thesis statement. And all semester, we've been saying the thesis statement is the roadmap to the essay. The thesis statement helps you structure the essay. The thesis statement lets the reader know in what order you're going to be discussing the different topics inside of your essay, right? So if we would look at the first one, right? This one here, I'm going to highlight it, right? So it has been affecting people by creating isolation that has led to how people think more of themselves than considering other people, by changing behavior like more violence. So this is the whole first question that it's going to, the whole first reason that this one is going to explain, right? So I'm gonna, let me get into a document that I can work on. That's a PDF. Enable editing. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the document, right? And there we've got our two thesis statement, right? Get bigger. So it has been affecting people by creating isolation, right? That has led to how people think more of themselves than considering other people, by changing their behavior, like more rude. Okay, so maybe that's the first part, right? I'm sorry. So this is the first one. So it's affecting people by creating isolation, right? That has led to how people think more of themselves than considering other people. So I think what Stephanie at least mentioned that she had worked on, right? I think she took it to the next level and was saying, all right, so if this is going to be one, I can go to the article and find out the quotes that support it, right? So the first one is creating isolation to how people think more of themselves than considering other people. I'm going to go to the article. And see, there, I remember there was a title here, right? So let's see what it says, right? The pandemic loosened ties between people. Kids stopped going to school, their parents stopped going to work, parishioners stopped going to church, people stopped gathering in general. And sociologists think that all this isolation shifted the way we behave. We're more likely to break rules when our bonds to society are weakened, right? A Harvard sociologist who studies social disorder told me. We become untethered, right? Which means like disconnected, right? Or untied to each other. We tend to prioritize our own private interests over others or the public. Turn of the century scholar Emil Durkheim called this state anomie, or lack of social norms that leads to lawlessness. We are moral beings to the extent that we are social beings. Durkheim wrote, in the past 2 years, we have stopped being social, and in many cases, we've stopped being moral too. We've got, I think, a generalized sense that rules simply don't apply, right? Richard Rosenfeld, a criminologist in the University of Missouri in St. Louis, told me in some places, he says, police arrested fewer people during the pandemic, and when enforcement goes down, people tend to relax their commitment to the rules. Oh, that's a different reason, right? So if we are looking at this section that talks about isolation and how being isolated changes us, we start to see that they give, she uses a psychologist that says that when we become disconnected, when we become untethered, right, or disconnected, we tend to prioritize our own private interests over the public, right? So that's one reason, right? Here, there's actually a name for it, right? Anomie, right? That means like the lack of social norms leads to lawlessness. That when there's no social norms, like when there's a disruption, right? That that we tend to behave lawlessly, right? And then there's another reason here. When you scroll down, it says that there's less law enforcement. So when people are being arrested, also people relax their commitment to the rules, so they behave more lawlessly. And then the end says, though it's been a life-saving tool throughout the pandemic, mask wearing has likely made the problem worse, just as easier to scream at someone on Twitter than in real life. It's easier to rage at a mass flight attendant than one whose face you can fully see, right? It talks about that. So it gives us 2 or 3 reasons why isolation is having an impact on how we behave, right? So I'm gonna go to my document, right? And so if we were writing a body paragraph, when you do a body paragraph, right, you write the topic, you should tell it what this paragraph is going to be about. So we can start. Right. So remember the prompt is asking, right, at the beginning, in what ways has the pandemic affected people, right? So that's what the thesis is answering, or that's what the essay will answer. And now we're going into the details, right? That's what the body paragraphs do. So one way has been the pandemic has caused people, is affecting people is by isolation, right? So the pandemic has caused people to isolate and become disconnected from others. So one reason we saw, right, was the psychologist reason, right? If I'm here, I could do this, right? This was one, and I'm not in. Let me just bring this into Adobe so I can have a little more license to work with it, right? This is a little bit, I think, of what Stephanie was describing that she did, right? That for each of her topics, she was going to the text and finding the examples. So bear with me one moment while I open this in Adobe Acrobat. Okay, I'm in Acrobat, and I'm going to the section of what I'm going to write about. And then I'm saying, this is one thing I highlighted and said, oh, one reason that related to isolation, which is the topic I'm going to speak about here. Right, and I'm working in Adobe, I can't even think of Acrobat, right? So the one version I have allows me to highlight, but if you're working in Word, you could do it in Word as well, right? So I'm going to highlight that reason, and here, stop being social, we stop being moral, right? Moral means following rules, and here, when law enforcement goes down, right? This, and then maybe say something about the impact that mask wearing has had. Now, if you're thinking about this, right, I'm picking like 4 examples, right? So when you pick more examples, that just makes your body paragraph stronger, right? Makes the case for your body paragraph stronger because you're using more examples, right? And also some folks say I sometimes run out of things that what I need to write about. That's because you're not giving your body paragraph the weight by using examples, and examples don't just take up space. Examples are about making the body paragraph stronger. So the first reason, let me guess here, I got the psychologist's name right, Robert Sampson, right, Harvard psychologist, right? So I'm gonna go here, right? And that, I think I'm gonna use his quote. I think he said it better than I can. Or he kind of says it. One second, just. Right, when we become untethered, we tend to prioritize our own private interests over those of others, right? What he's saying is that let me just- right, that we lose some sense of being considerate people. Let me just stick with it. Right? It's the way I understand it. So let me just stick here, right? Let's go to the beginning of it, right? So we're talking about isolation. The pandemic has caused people to isolate and become disconnected from others. The article states that the Harvard University psychologist Robert Simpson says, when we become untethered, we tend to prioritize our own private interests over those of others or the public. What he's saying is that when we become disconnected from each other, we lose some sense of being considerate people, that we become less caring of how other people feel. Right? So it's going to explaining what this quote is, right? So it's not just stating it. The other thing that we need to do, right, in a moment, I'm going to put in is the citation, because we have to put citation in here, right? Right. All right, and then we go back to the article. I'll be right back.
Professor, can I ask you, because I know we've spoken about this, but one of the quotes that I was trying to use, so I don't know if I can still use, so it technically would be a quote within the quote.
Uh-huh.
So like, I think it's that one actually that you're, well, no, not that one. The one on top, we're more likely to break rules when our bonds to society are weakened.
Yeah.
Robert Sampson. Do I include the whole thing where it includes up to the whole told me part? Like that full quote, like we're more.
Yeah, I mean, you can. Let me actually use it, right? Let me use that quote instead.
Okay.
Right, all the way to this.
Because I didn't know where to cut it off from. So.
Right, I could use that. So let's do that together. I think that would be right. So I could use that quote instead. But let's look at it. Right. Let me see. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna move this here. I'm gonna put that whole sentence here. Right. And then I'm gonna recraft the body paragraph, but I'm gonna use your quote instead because it's just as valid, right? Right, so it starts that. The pandemic has caused people to isolate and become disconnected from others, right? And let's put this here. We're most likely to break rules when our bonds to society are weakened, right? Robert Sampson, a Harvard psychologist who studies social disorder, told me, right? So if you wanted to, I'm gonna see if anyone else has an opinion as well, but the difference today with what I did up here, right, was that I included that information, right? The article states that Harvard, right? So the article states it, and it's saying that the Harvard psychologist, university psychologist Robert Sampson says, then I just used the quote. So one way you could do is that, which is what I did, introduce it. But here, if you wanted to use the whole quote, you could say that. You may have to do a little more explaining, but if you were going to use the whole quote, you could, let's look at how it flows, right? The pandemic has caused people to isolate and become disconnected from others. We're most likely to break rules when our bonds to society are weak, and Robert Sampson, a psychologist, told me. So it seems the I don't know, let's just keep the told me there because I want to do two things with this, right? So if you were using a quote within a quote, right? Then here we have this quote, and actually, if we're going to keep the entire sentence, right, which is we're going to keep the whole thing. So normally you would put quotes right around the quote, right? This is the quote from the article, right? And so something's going to look weird in a moment because I'm going to put a quote at the beginning, and there's double. So what you would do when you have the quote within the quote, the text of the quoted material gets a single quotation on it. It's going to be a little weird because it's not going to let me do it, right? So it gets a single instead of a double quote. That we know that quote goes there, and it's going to end here, right? So that's the quote within a quote, right? But there is something a little kind of clunky about the Harvard psychologist who studies social disorder told me, right? There's something about leaving the told me in there seems a little odd. So what do you think you could do? Stephanie or anybody? Because I'm saying this seems like a little weird because it says told me. We know it comes from the article. We could explain it in the next sentence, right?
Yeah, because every time that she says that professor or whatever tells her, it would told me, and I'm like, how do I flow from there? Right.
So it seems a little awkward, right, for her to be saying, for you to put told me. So your instinct is right. So you could, let's see if we ended the quote before that, right? If we ended the quote before that, right? You could also say shared with the author, right? That might be a way to, you could end the quote sooner, right? We're most likely to break rules or shared with the author, right? And then explain, Always. So we worked through a little bit. Let me take this out. So I took Stephanie's quote, which is about the same, in the same area and the same topic, and we kind of together worked through how we could put it in there, how we could deal with something that feels awkward, like maybe the entire quote doesn't work. That using the quote by saying here, I'll just read the whole paragraph. So the pandemic has caused people to isolate and become disconnected from others. We're most likely to break rules when our bonds to society are weakened, Robert Sampson, a Harvard psychologist who studies social behavior, shared with the author, right? Oh, and we lost Stephanie, here she comes back. Shared with the author. And then it says Sampson is sharing how when we become isolated and disconnected from one another, that broken bond leads to us feeling like we can break society's rules more easily. Stephanie, I knew you popped out for a second and are back in, but I was showing how
Sorry, I touched the power. I was trying to pick up the laptop and I touched the power by mistake. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But essentially what I was showing is that we began crafting this body paragraph that, we started the same way. I put in this article and and if you look at the structure that we use the quote, right? And then we go to explaining what the quote means, right? And then we did that there, but then I did it again just with the quote, the part of the quote that Stephanie gave us. And the quote was really talking about something just a little different, more like how that isolation and being disconnected from one another makes it easier for us to break society's rule, right? That feeling of separation creates a sense of society's rules, right? If we were going to continue building this on this body paragraph, we can find another example inside of the text, right? So, and we could say the article also talked about how there was less law enforcement, or we should say less arrests, right? Okay, this reduction in law enforcement right? So the author also talked about how, right? That's another example. There was less arrests during the pandemic. This reduction in law enforcement also leads to people feeling that they can break the law, right? As we're seeing the body paragraph form in front of us, right? We see how it's growing, and basically by finding an example, either sometimes directly quoting from it or paraphrasing, right, what the article is saying, as an example and using it inside of it. Now, you could do a third reason, right? And we can type in a third reason here, right? And third reason and explanation, right? We could do another reason because there's other ones, right? If we go to the article, let me just look real quickly, right? Oh, the idea of masks, we could talk about masks, also masks a lot, the same way it's easier, that it's easier to be rude to somebody whose face you can't see, right? It's basically saying that whose full face you can't see. There's another reason why what's happening about isolation, separation, disconnected, our faces are now also disconnected. So you can do a third reason. And if you start to see that the body paragraph then starts to form and become not just form, but become like informed, like we become informed, we become informed about how isolation, right, and being disconnected is affecting, the pandemic is affecting us. So you do one reason, two reasons, three reasons. Now you got a juicy body paragraph, and then you do some concluding sentence, right? Therefore, right? I put therefore, this is my concluding sentence. The isolation and disconnection caused by the pandemic has led people to behave more rudely to one another. So if we read the whole paragraph, let's read it. The pandemic has caused people to isolate and become disconnected from others. We're most likely to break rules when our bonds to society are weak, and Robert Sampson, a Harvard psychologist who studies social disorder, shared with the author. Sampson is sharing how, when we become isolated and disconnected from one another, that broken bond leads us to feeling like we can break society's rules more easily. The article also talked about how there was less arrests during the pandemic. This reduction in law enforcement also leads to people feeling that they can break the law. Third reason, come up with the third reason, we could say something about masking, and therefore the isolation and disconnection caused by the pandemic has led people to behave more rudely to one another. So you conclude that body paragraph and you would go on to the next one, right? Another reason the article shares as to why people are behaving weirdly is, and then you would ... right? You would start your next body paragraph, right? And then you do your next one and your next one, right? And you would follow a similar format. You would set what this body paragraph is going to talk about. And in this case, it was the sense of isolation, right? And then the next one was I don't have to make it up. I could look at the thesis, changing their behavior, right? And violence. The next one, we're going to talk about how the drinking and the drug abuse, right? And then the last one, how we interact with each other, like, right? So and you would construct your essay and then write a conclusion. So if you're looking at me doing this with you, us doing it together, I'm going to come back into the classroom, right? We just spent almost a half hour working on building the body paragraph, right? And that's with all of us doing it. That's with me and all my stuff, stopping for questions, changing the course and I wanted to do that with Stephanie when Stephanie did that, because that could happen when you're writing your paper, right? You could start writing one thing and then you could read something and change your mind and decide I want to go a different path. And so that's perfectly fine to be able to do that. And that might happen. So another reason and case or argument for you starting sooner rather than later, right? Because this is the final exam. So this is the paper that, gives you the opportunity to put into play everything we've been building on this semester and working on in the semester. And so give yourself the time to work on it. Now, I cannot control your lives. We can't control our own lives. I mean, I can't even control mine. I mean, here we go. I worked so hard these last 2 years to stay healthy, and somehow, that happened, and there was no control that I could have over it. But we have to be able to pivot, right? So I'm lucky in a way. This is not good, the best situation to be online, but at least it gives us an opportunity to be able to connect and to read the article and to talk. But we have to be able, the same way we have to be able to pivot in our lives, that it's important when you're crafting your paper and your essay, that you give yourself the time and space to try to create the best work that you can. And so giving yourself the time to do it is important. Okay, so give yourself time. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a overall summary, and then we could take a short break, and then what we'll do is I'll answer questions. Ask me any questions about the final, about the annotated bibliography, about anything else, anything at all. Well, it's question and answer time. And then I will create breakout rooms so that at least I know the first person would be if Stephanie wants to be in a breakout room with Julia. I will put them both in a breakout room. They will work. When they're done, they come back in. If someone else, you could either raise your hand, let me know. You can work with Julia. And that's what we'll do for the second part of the class. So, okay, to be prepared, right? So let me start from the beginning. May 18th, right, at 12:30 a.m., right, the prompt will go live. So everybody will have access to the prompt to see what the prompt will be for the final exam. So we're working with a prompt, but just to be clear, that is not the prompt for the final exam, right? It will has a relationship, it's about the same article, etc. But you will have a different prompt. The important thing to know about a prompt is to listen and be able to identify what is it asking you for. Is it asking you for, in this case, why people, how has the pandemic been affecting people, right? Whatever our prompt was, but that prompt will be different. To be able to discern if a prompt is asking you for specific and is asking you for to respond to the article by the article's information, or asking you literally for your own opinion, for your own perspective, for your own thing. So when you're looking at a prompt, you understand those two things, right? So the first thing is the prompt. That goes live May 18th. You have a whole week until May 24th to write that essay, edit it, read it through, read it out loud, right? And then upload it, right? So whenever you're done, upload it, put it in there, go on with your life, right? Don't wait till the 24th.
You know what's crazy, Professor? I was legit about to start writing this 5-paragraph thing, thinking that I was, I'm gonna do it now, and then on the 18th, I just upload it, and that's it.
Oh yeah, no.
Girl,
This is just practice.
Because you don't know. Yeah,
Okay.
You don't know what that question is. And the question that the professor that he gave you is very basic. It's just asking you to basically summarize the essay, summarize the article. So now from the previous prompt that we also received, you see that the other part to the, so we know that may possibly be the one half of the question, but now it's going to ask for something specific. It may ask to connect it to other readings that you've read. It may ask a more direct question. It may ask you to prove a certain point. So that's why we're saying, just practice. So you have an idea. If you were to summarize this essay now, you don't have to pick it up again. Like you already know what's needed. So if there is need for that connection to another form of writing, you're able to now fully concentrate on that writing and then only go back to this reading for whatever purpose, because you've been looking at this reading for a week and a half now. Mm-hmm. So that's the only reason that we're saying. But for me, because he's also saying that because of me, I don't like homework. So I would take this as an opportunity. Like I do my rough drafts on my laptop because I like to save the earth, but I also don't want to keep rewriting the same thing. So, but I always keep all of the drafts that I have. But now if you were to open this up and the first half of the question is just to summarize the article, you already have that. You already have an introduction for that. You just probably have to add an extra sentence or an extra something to say to answer the other half of the question. Let's say that it's comparing and contrasting the two articles and you wrote a body. Like right now, you guys are practicing how to put a nice body together, supportive body together. You may not need everything from it, But there may be something in your draft that will prove your point in your final. So if you have it, it's like you're cheating, it's not necessarily cheating because you're getting it from yourself. So, and then it's from home. So I don't want to say this, so the professor can hear me, but you have everything there. It's an open book test. So what hurt is it going to do just to write this paragraph? Or even if you just write a paragraph, even if it's not introduction or whatever the case is. But understand if you don't give too much information, it's an introduction. If you give that detail, it's going to be a body paragraph. It's like a study guide. Like when a professor gives you a cheat sheet and says, hey.
Right, I
think she got disconnected.
Yeah, but I think what Julia was saying is right on, right? That that
Something
you have
totally weird.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was like this was the actual prompt itself, but
yeah, it's not.
I think I can do it. I just want to get this one out the way because
Yeah.
the finals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. So the actual prompt won't be until May 18th when it goes live. Then you'll be able to see it, and then you'll be able to answer it. But what we're doing basically is is practicing what we did the week before, as Julia was mentioning when we looked at the other article, the Martin Luther King article, the ways of oppression, and we looked at that prompt. That prompt was asking the students to respond to previous readings in the class as well. Not only respond to this, but ask for previous readings. So what I want to pull out is the idea of understand. Really, when you look at the prompt, you're looking for direction and for you to follow the directions of the prompt. And if it's asking you to just answer a question like this one does, just answer it. If it's asking you for your question and relate it to other readings, answer the question and then relate it to other readings. If it's asking you to answer a question and then say your opinion about the question you're answering, you answer the question and then respond with your opinion, right? So that you fully answer the prompt. That's the important thing to pull away from all of this. And that the prompt we're working with is not the prompt for the final, it's just a practice so that we can get used to practicing, used to getting ready to work with this article that we have not worked with. You had no assignments for any of those things, right? The one useful thing, though, I saw many other of you wrote the summary. The summary is useful because you will use some of the summary when you're writing that synopsis. The way we use Teresa summary to write the synopsis for the class, the introduction for the class, that whatever synopsis you wrote, you could use that. Definitely you could use elements from your synopsis to build your introductory paragraph, right? The elements of your summary for that. So, one, the prompt will go live. Two, I will say, read the article, like even after today's class, before you're writing it, even when you look at the prompt, read what the prompt is. And I would just suggest read the article and be thinking about how you're going to respond to that prompt when you're reading the article. And then you could do, let me just, one second, I'm going to mute Abby.
If anything reasonable.
So then, and then you follow what we did in class. Once you understand what the question is asking you, you brainstorm your response, possible reasons. You begin crafting your thesis statement, begin crafting your introduction, the elements, picture the author, the title, the synopsis, the thesis statement. Once you've crafted, boom, you've got them in there. And then once you have that thesis statement, you've got the format, the roadmap, the different things that you put in there. If we had used the other prompt, it broke it down by mentally, physically, and emotionally. So then you would look at all the mental reasons, all the physical reasons, all the emotional reasons and that would be your brainstorming. Where the brainstorming is related to the prompt that you create. Okay. So so that's my suggestion, that when you are reading, when you get the prompt, read the article, and for you to start working on your paper and your final exam essay as soon as possible. And as Julia mentioned, she used a term that I hadn't heard in a while, but like an open book test. An open book test is a test where you're allowed to bring the textbook into the classroom to help you look up the answers so that you can craft your work. And in a sense, the take home final is that as well, right? You have the final You have the videos of the classes that we've done as backup. You have the practice that we've worked with, and then once you have the prompt is the last piece you need. But basically, you should be familiar with this article so that whatever question, that even if it was a specific question that said, how is law enforcement affected by it, you could be able to say, oh, I know about that law enforcement. It talked about, that people breaking the law more, that there were less arrests, that there was this, that there was that you become familiar to that with the essay so that whatever question comes your way, you're able to answer it. Okay, and that's the best way to prepare. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to give us, because we've been going for a long, almost an hour and 45 minutes. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and then we'll come back and we'll have questions. And Julia and Stephanie will go in the breakout room. But I think, let everybody take a break, even if they run to the bathroom, get some water. And we'll do a 2:13 on my computer clock. Let's come back at like 2:20. So we'll just take a quick break, and then we'll do some work together. Okay, so back at 2:20, I'll see everybody. Okay. I'm back. I hope you're all back. What I did, with Stephanie and Julia, is I made you both co-hosts. So that should enable you to have, just to ensure that you can share screen and all that stuff when you're in there. So you will let me know if you're able to do that.
I know when I was in the session with
Say that one more time, Julie. You were coming in and out.
Oh, I said when I went in the room with was able to share his screen.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna Stephanie, you back?
Yeah. I
Okay. All right.
came back.
I'm gonna put you both in a breakout room, and then I will and I believe whenever you're done, you can just come back into the class. Let me find Julia, and let me find Stephanie. Where are you at? Right here. Okay. And now you should get an invitation to go into the room. Okay. Stephanie accepted. And Julia, did you get that? Yep, Julia left. Okay, they're in the breakout room. Okay, everyone else. Any questions about what we went over? Any questions about this assignment, the annotated? This is an open forum, open questions. Was everybody able to see? Let me just look at this, at who's in class right now. Yeah, I think just about almost everybody in the class right now submitted their annotated, so you should be able to take a visual. Was everybody able to see their grade? Any questions?
I have my hand up.
Okay, go. Yes, Ashley.
Well, it's not okay. It's about the annotated bibliography and I call it the WPAAS.
Okay, right. Okay.
So, well, or we pass we. So first of the annotated bibliography, I just saw the notes, some comments on it.
Mm-hmm.
Saw maybe I didn't saw very clearly the grade of it.
The grade should be a number.
So you can see it. I think you, as you said before, you can see it in Turnitin, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you go to turn it in, let me were you able to go to turn it in to look at it? Oh, you are, because you can see your document. The thing is, hold on, I'm gonna go. The thing is that the reason why I don't open up turn it in is because it opens up, when I open up turn it in, it shows the whole class. And so
Okay.
all of you are there with, but I'm gonna open this up and take a look at it for a second. And actually, I'm gonna stop recording. Yeah.